These monies are also coming with, as in the form of loans. We know the issues, right? We're talking to the IMF for a possible bailout, and one of the key indicators that often we would use to measure how economies broadly are things. And if you look at the recent IMF report amongst the different what we need in terms of the flows, but also as a what I want to do in the next couple of minutes really is just walk you through how we went about doing this assessment, and then also walk you through some of the findings in the report. And then once we're sort of done with that, we would pretty much launch this report. And the important thing is that the conversation shouldn't stop in this room. We take some of the evidence based on the findings, and then we use that in our advocacy work going forward to ensure that things, or the right things, are done. To some of you within the space to get your perspectives on the issues and sort of synthesize all of that information. And then on the quantitative front, we also dug through a number of data points at both the global level, at the regional level, and at the respective country level, and tried to marry the information that we have got from the stakeholder interviews or consultations with the quantitative data that we had, and more or less synthesize all of them using some sort of political economy analysis. And I will show you, in a sense, some of the fish bones that show our findings on these issues. So we did all of that, did the stakeholder mapping, and then we reconciled the data. So now maybe let me just talk through the findings. And the findings are categorized into two thematic areas, just like I've discussed, in line with the objectives of the research. So the first finding I want to talk about here is more what is happening at the global level, these narratives, and how they shape the conversation on climate change and climate financing in Africa. Then after this, we will look at some of the specific country-related issues as well. So contributed the least to global climate change. If you added up all the numbers from since the Industrial Revolution days to date, the total contribution of Africa to all the greenhouse gases, so not just CO2, but CO2, methane, the fluorocarbons, is actually less than 4%, right, of all of what other countries have emitted. So you can see a bit of that chart on your right-hand side there. The problem though is that although Africa has contributed the least, unfortunately it's also the one that is suffering the most. More broadly accepted definition from the UNFFC, when we say climate financing, it basically means, and I'll quote here, local, national, or transnational financing drawn from public, private, and alternative sources of financing that seeks to support mitigation and adaptation actions that will address climate change. It's a lot of words, isn't it? Agree? Yeah. The question then is, okay, when you say local, when you say national or transnational, what does it mean? Or when we say public, private, alternative, again, what does this mean? So you will see really that without a very clear, detailed definition of what each and every one of these things mean, at a very global level, some activities are being undertaken, sometimes even by countries, OECD countries, and being tagged or classified as climate finance, when in reality, it actually doesn't meet this, definition. And part of the issue comes down to, who is providing the funds, where will the money come from, and where should it be targeted at. So this is a hotly contested issue at the global level. And even as we speak currently with the conversations in Egypt, this is one of the issues that is on the table. Because without a very clear definition of what each and every one of these things mean, like I said, people can play this clever accounting thing where you would see countries reporting activities that are supposedly climate finance, but in actual fact, there isn't. And there's lots of evidence that we actually cite in the report to buttress this point, activities. At a global level, the developed nations committed to providing 100 billion USD a few years ago. And even of that 100 billion, when we break it down, in the last couple of years, Africa received just about 26%, right, of that. The last year's numbers has gone up a little bit. It's about 27 or so billion. But the point I want to highlight here is that even that 27, or let's round it up, 30 billion is still a drop in the ocean compared to the needs. You have a 250 billion a year need, and you are getting 30 billion coming in. If you work the math, that's just about 7%, right, of that. So clearly, at this current trajectory, we wouldn't be able to implement the NDCs on the continent. And again, something must change about that. And this is what I just said is what I'm showing here on this chart. And if you break this further down into the different segments or sectors, you can see that most of the money is coming in often in the form of various debt instruments. But the point countries in Africa have been making is, well, we didn't cause this problem in the first instance. And in fact, even if we did, you can only hold us to about 4%, right, of it. And so if you want us to do something about it, then of course, bring the money, but the money shouldn't be one that comes with all the strings, right, attached to it.
So they are energy poor. That governments have been trying to, extend electricity, energy, oil and gas, electricity to advance our development. At the same time, there is a global call for climate action to reduce our impact on the climate so that we can save the future generations. Balancing these difficulties have become very challenging for the African government, and therefore there is a call from some quarters that at least they should allow us to produce our oil to get a revenue to be able to finance our climate actions, and at the same time receive funding from those who have polluted the climate much more over the past centuries, if you like. These are important conversations, but there are realities that we have to also pay attention to. Beyond the concerns that we may not be able to produce our oil and gas and therefore it will be stranded, how do we ensure that the new evolution and technologies that are evolving to address the climate actions, we are not actually left behind. Those are concerns that we need to really support government to think through and process them really well. There are countries who are participating in the climate action who are producing far more oil and gas than we do. I mean, US is producing about 11 million barrels of oil per day. Ghana is doing about 150,000 barrels of oil. Norway is transitioning by 2025, and they are doing about 2 million barrels of oil per day. So these are significant producers who still see the need for climate action. But what we also find is that even though African governments are asking for investment, they are showing a lack of capacity to actually access those funds when they are available. The conditionalities around them, we are not really prepared to circumvent or address those conditions. At the same time, even our own context, we are not doing much to raise resources domestically. So corruption and inappropriate deals are actually sucking the resources that the state could also use to address some of the climate issues that we do have, and also finance research and development for us to be able to participate within the current context of the global discussion, for us to switch from fossil fuel. Immediately, fossil fuel will continue to be relevant. We will need oil and gas in the foreseeable future, say 20, 30 years. Oil and gas will still be relevant. But the fundamental worry is that oil companies are also becoming energy companies. They are also exploring opportunities, economic opportunities in the renewable space. So if you're only talking and hoping that you will get all the investment to produce your oil and gas, it may not come. And therefore the need for us to also adjust and look at the opportunities in the renewable space so that we are not left behind when the world actually does.
Ahe na nhia woba ɔman mu ɛkɔ sectors of the economy a imfa na saa sika no ɔmɔde ɛkɔ ana wone companies any organizations a wɔwɔ ɛfɔm ɛyɛ adwuma no what are their challenges nti issues na wɔn face on the ground nti it was all of those issues na yɛtena ase ka sɛ yɛnyɛ ho research kakra na yɛntwerɛ document a ɛbɛkyerɛ sɛ nneɛma wei ana affecte Africa ɛba climate nsɛm wɔfa Ghana so a nneɛma sei ana ne so affecte nti ne tɔfa ne report na na emu highlights and I say important issues are maybe to say sikana here no.
Thank you for watching Nation One TV. Kindly subscribe for more news updates.